This is S4. Sit back, relax, and keep your eyes to the skies.
Greetings, folks, and welcome to S4, where we talk about the serious issues involving paranormal and current events, coming to you live from the S4 headquarters in the heart of the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, right here in our studio in Cape Horn, Concrete, Washington. So tonight, it's October 11th. We have B.A. Crisp, author of Redbird, and paranormal experiencer in Florida. I wrote this wrong, but yeah. She lives in Florida, but she grew up in Ohio. So we have a whole lot to talk about with Ohio. To talk things paranormal and even some MK Ultra. So stay tuned. And Cole, you wanted to give a shout out real quick.
To everyone in Canada. Happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I hope you're all having a great day. It's pretty hard to be thankful this year for a lot of things, but keep trying, keep living. To everyone in the U.S., I'll be thankful for you next month.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'll leave that one alone. Yeah. Oh, God. So how you doing tonight, B.A.?
I'm doing well. It's not raining here in Florida.
Yeah,
she just keeps rubbing it in, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's like, oh, it's so sunny and nice. It's not raining.
Here's the deal: we don't get hurricanes in Washington, so we should be fortunate for that. We get tropical storms, which are
which are pretty much the same.
They are.
Yeah.
And we certainly do get hurricanes. Yes, we do.
We just call them something different. There's still 100-mile-an-hour winds, but yeah, they just knock the power out for a week at a time.
Right. Which
we'll be discussing in our other show that we'll be doing starting next week. Anyway, BA, so growing up in Ohio, tell us about growing up in Ohio. What was the scariest experience that happened to you that you can recall? I mean, yeah, you have a whole lot that happened in Ohio.
Yeah, wow. I'll have to get on Dr. Cooper's couch here. So, where do I start? So I grew up in Ohio as a child of I was about 6 years old when I was remanded to the court system, and I actually grew up for a good portion of my childhood as a foster kid. And we're talking about the 60s, 70s, and then part of the 80s. And I was in a situation where my mother there were some really weird things, so I have to preface this. So my mother was actually sent off to, and we'll start off with this weird little tidbit. My mother was actually sent off, she was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, and she was sent off to a place called the Tiffin Mental Health Hospital in Tiffin, Ohio. But you can't find any history about that, the mental health hospital. You can find it as a former boys' home, like a lost boys' home, they called it, during the 1920s. Uh-huh. And you can find it currently as a home for the mentally challenged. But what you cannot find is when it existed as a mental health hospital. So I tried to do some digging around, and I remember going out there to visit my mother, and if she wasn't catatonic because she was so drugged out she couldn't speak and she was drooling in a wheelchair, she was insisting that she be let out of there because she said the government was performing experiments on her. So that was just kind of how my childhood kicked off. I was moved at about the age of 9 to a remote farm out in Monroeville, outside of Monroeville, Ohio, and not too far from NASA Plumbrook Station, where all kinds of weird things went on in that area. So if you think about Ohio, have any of you heard of the amusement park Cedar Point?
Yes.
Or not?
Yes.
Okay. So I was very, very close to there. And Perkins Township is where NASA Plumbrook Station was. So some of the things that would happen, I don't even know where to start. I actually made a list of like the top 10, Eric. So anytime you guys want to chime in, so I'm not doing all the talking.
Well, real quick, I'm curious because I know you've done a lot of research into MK Ultra and the CIA. Is it possible that your mom, the boys' home, was a CIA front?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I've actually looked at testimony, 1995 Tucson, Arizona testimony when there was a congressional hearing held on these MK Ultra projects. And just to kind of back up for our listeners a little bit, MK Ultra actually, the predecessor to MK Ultra was a little-known DoD CIA program begun in the 1950s known as MK Naomi. So MK Ultra was kind of the successor to that. And the whole idea behind it was using bioweapons to incapacitate or kill test subjects. And then it really progressed from there into projects and sub-projects. And there were allegedly there were 162 projects, but I've talked with people that are now retired from government who have said there were upwards of 300. And, and there were 80 institutions involved and 185 researchers. So some of these people did some things like, they gave radiation. It was Harvard Medical Center, Massachusetts General, Boston University School of Medicine. They gave radioactive iodine to 70 Down syndrome students at a special school. And that was without informed consent. MIT gave radioactive substances in food at Rentham State School to the students without any informed consent or parental knowledge. So those were just some of the things that started. But to go back to you, Eric, and what you asked me about my mom, there is a Canadian journalist named Elizabeth Nixon. And Elizabeth claimed that her mother was under the care at Allen Memorial Institute, under the care of Dr. Ewan Cameron, who was a psychiatrist. And he used a drug called sparine, and he did shock treatments, but he also kept people in induced comas for, 30 days at a time, and he re-outfitted horse barns for isolation compartments to see how people would react. And a lot of this funding came from what are called cutout organizations. So it was CIA funding that was funneled through fronts, if you will, front companies, if you will. And, they did, some of the projects that were involved there were Project Artichoke, or it's also known as Operation Artichoke, and they were researching interrogation methods. And what they wanted to know was, could a person be involuntarily made to perform assassinations through the use of hypnosis, morphine, and LSD? Project Bluebird was kind of that Manchurian candidate super spy experiment where thousands of prisoners and mental health patients were subjected to some very unethical mind control techniques. So they'd be forced to stare at a red light for hours while they're strapped down, or they'd be shown images, or they'd be encouraged to stab a bowel. So things like that. And as I started looking into this, I wondered, did this happen to my mom? Was she part of it? And and I probably will never know. I can't find words. I can't trace anything. She 60, and she basically closed in her life, and it was never the same after coming out of there.
Huh. And we're talking CIA, and now our internet's glitching.
Of course.
Well, to be fair, the storm probably has something to do with it.
Oh, I'm sure
Yeah,
it
most
did.
likely.
I'm sure it did. It's just really, we talk everything under the sun and everything's fine, and we bring up CIA, and oh my God.
I'm just waiting for Google to start talking.
Right?
Yeah, well, they actually did some interesting things. So what gave me the idea for Redbird was a combination of growing up on this remote farm close to this facility and some of the really odd paranormal things that I'll get into in a moment that happened. But also there was another CIA and MK. It was under the umbrella of MK Ultra, and it was called Operation Midnight Climax, where and they actually hired prostitutes, and they had these what they called safe houses, and they were in San Francisco and New York City and a few other major cities, and they would compromise individuals, particularly if they were foreign dignitaries or high-ranking military officials. They would compromise them with prostitutes, but they also would slip them LSD, and they were recorded for potential bribery purposes in order to continue to receive funding. And, there are so many other projects like MK Search, little known ones like MK Search, MK Cotton, so that combined with some of the weirdness that went on the farm. Now we're really going to segue, Eric, we're going to get into your whole Halloween theme here. Yeah. So I grew up at the time at a very remote farm called Mapledale, and Mapledale Farm was pretty much out in the middle of nowhere, and our home sat at a crossroads, and one of those crossroads was actually still gravel, so that tells you what at the time it was still gravel. It's since been paved. Across the street from us was a field. We were surrounded by fields, let's put it that way, and woods. There were fields and woods, and there was a river, and there were streams, and I spent a lot of time as a kid outside, which a lot of kids I don't think do that too much anymore, but I was pretty much left to my own devices. I was living with a man that I thought was my father, and he turned out not to be my father at all. So things get pretty curious. So one of the biggest memories, one of the things that has always stuck with me, and people from my town have said, "Oh, don't talk about this, so please don't talk about this," but I have to because I'm curious. So I didn't talk about it for decades, and I want to preface this. I didn't talk about the paranormal activity for decades. One, because when your mom gets a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, who's going to believe you? Mm-hmm. Right? And you get labeled, and you're scoffed at, and you're ridiculed. And I also grew up in a very conservative Christian environment. So, and I was a wild girl in my youth. So, as a wild young lady, I actually, I think, was trying to bury a lot of this and ignore it and hope it went away. And I had this wild lifestyle, and I couldn't wait to get out of there. And then as you age, some of us come full circle. And as I aged, I thought, I want to revisit this, but I also felt that I needed credibility. And one of the things I did was go back to college. So, I went back to Ursuline College, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to share this with all of your listeners. So I spent a lot of time as a stripper. I spent a lot of years because I couldn't make it on minimum wage. So I worked in clubs, and then I became the co-owner of a club, and I forged the first penthouse licensing agreement with Bob Guccione. And then I said, and we ended up selling the club to Larry Flint, actually, a few years later. So are you guys offended, any of you?
Oh, no.
Oh, heck no.
Nope.
And
Oh, good.
Just listening.
I'm teasing, but
if I had the body, I'd still be doing it. You can make a lot of money on that.
so we sold the club, and I thought, I really want to explore this again, and all these things that happened as a kid. But I said, no one's going to believe me, and they're going to say, oh, she was an ex-stripper, and her mom was a paranoid schizophrenic, and she's not credible. So I decided to go back to college, and I went back, and I went to Ursuline College, and I graduated summa cum laude from Ursuline College. And that wasn't enough, so I went to George Washington University and graduated from their Graduate School of Political Management as their co-valedictorian out of 400 students. And then I went on to a writing program at Exeter College at Oxford, and also attended the London School of Journalism. So I figured, okay, now I can revisit this and start talking about this and feeling. It's taken me time to get comfortable talking about what I saw. All right, you guys. Ready for story number one?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I was 12 years old. I was in the yard under a jungle gym with my brother and two other neighbor friends. And when I say neighbor friends, these friends lived a couple miles away. So we were trying to do something. I don't know if you, as kids, if you guys ever played the game. We were trying to have a seance, but we were trying to do something that we called in Ohio two-finger pickup, where you levitate somebody. So we had somebody, and I don't want to give their names away because I don't want them to get any ridicule because they're still in our hometown. So we were trying to do this two-finger pickup, and I'm facing toward the road, or I'm facing like where I can look down the road, so I can see a road, and I can see the field, and I can see the woods, and the road sloped up. So I saw this figure come up over the hill and start walking down the road toward our property. And it was probably 11 o'clock at night, which wasn't a big deal in July. And, we're in our yard, and, I pretty much was left to my own devices anyway. So this thing is bipedaling, and it's getting closer and closer to the edge of our property. And at the edge of our property, there was a rotting tree, but there was also a security light. So when the thing got under the tree or under the light, I was like, first it was coming down the street, and I'm like, or the road, and I'm like, why is this person wearing all white, and from head to toe? And then I'm like, are they in a spacesuit? And I keep trying to look, and as soon as that thing hit the security light, I said to myself, that thing's not human. and it was so tall, and my blood just went right to my toes, and I was so freaked out that I just pointed and said, oh my God, what's that? I remember exactly what I said. I said, oh my God, what's that? This thing startled, like it didn't expect anyone to be outside, and it turned its torso and it galloped across that field so damn fast and went into the woods. I'd never seen anything like it. And I said, it's got white fur on it. Of course, all of us kids, we get up and scramble our asses to the screen door, and we're fighting over the screen door because we're so terrified. And we tell our dad, or the man I thought was my dad at the time, and he said, oh, you kids are crazy. And it kind of went from there. So the next day, and we used to have military trucks go by our home a lot. So the next day they had all these, there were two or three trucks, the big, I don't know what you call them, Eric, but they had soldiers back. They were Jeeps, but they had long trailers, and all the soldiers like sat on benches in the back. I don't know what you call those, but yeah. And so I remember I made eye contact with one of the soldiers, and I was always fascinated when they'd go by, because I'm like, oh, because it was exciting, because we lived out in the middle of nowhere, and it was kind of like, wow. And I remember thinking, are they looking for that thing? Are they looking for that thing? And and what was that thing? So and we never did.
Did it look alien or did it look cryptid?
It looked cryptid, I think. I think it looked cryptid. It was so tall. I mean, I remember I caught a glimpse of a wide set eye that looked almost black. And the smell was horrible. I remember the smell of like sulfur or garbage. I remember that. And I just that's about all I remember. I did receive some validation years later. I was relaying the story to a really good, well, I consider him a good friend. We don't keep in touch too much now. He's still in our hometown, and great guy. And I was explaining to him what had happened, and he said, wow, he said, that's really crazy because my mom, his mom, their dad worked night shift at the factory, and they had like 8 kids, and they lived probably 1.5 miles or 2 miles away from us. And his mom was frantic and didn't sleep all night. And when her husband came home, she said there was a white creature that was looking in the windows, and she was pretty freaked out about it. And then after she died of breast cancer years ago. And when they were selling the home, wedged between, they had a railroad tie mantle, and wedged between there was a letter. And she wrote it on that night. She saw the creature and said, if anything happens to me or the kids, there was a white creature trying to get into the house. It's not human. So I thought that was really kind of bizarre.
So did it appear Bigfoot? So Bigfoot can oftentimes be 9 to 10 foot tall, and that's on the adult.
This thing was huge.
And that's on the adult scale. So
I'm
curious. I'm curious if it was a white Bigfoot, because we have heard reports of a Bigfoot with white fur versus the brown or the black.
Yeah, and I don't, I don't know. I say to myself, the reference point is that, when you have time to think about it after the fact, it's like, well, did we see a Bigfoot, or did we see an epigenetic experiment?
Right.
Or did we see, and is that why those soldiers were out there? Or did we see something extraterrestrial, or did we see something that came up out of the ground? I don't know.
That could be either. I would lean towards extraterrestrial or
me personally, in Ohio, I would lean towards a cave dweller, like some kind of There's a lot of cave systems out there too, and if you're living in the country, they're the underground cave systems, but they're still.
How far from Wright-Patterson were you?
Oh, I was probably 2 hours from Wright-Patterson. We're probably 2 hours away. So, but she made a great comment. Is it Kayla? Is that
yes,
Kayla?
Yeah, Kayla. So Kayla makes a great comment, and that's a great segue because the cave. In Redbird, I write about the cave systems, and our protagonist goes down into those cave systems, and she encounters something she doesn't understand. And in book 2, which is about, it's gone to the editor, which is this is a series. It's called the Quanta Chronicles, and I talk about the cave systems in Ohio in book 1. And the weird thing about it was, I told you in the beginning of the story, there was a field across the street from us. Well, in that field stood a lone tree, and that lone tree had 3 beams of light, vertical beams of light, ping into it one night. Again, when my brother and I were outside in the yard, and we were kind of laying on our stomachs and just talking. No friends there this time. And those 3 vertical beams pinged into that light, and we ran back to the house again, fighting for the screen. But we went over there the next day because we were little explorers, and we noticed under the tree were 2 giant slabs of concrete. And I said, oh my gosh, and it was just they were so big, and they were cut stones. They were huge stones, and that you couldn't budge them. We thought, we were trying to be Superman and Wonder Woman and move the stones. We couldn't even get them to budge a millimeter. And but there was one little triangular hole there, and I said, "There's stairs going down there. There's stairs that go down there." So we ran back and got a flashlight, and we couldn't see anything. I mean, it was just too tiny of a hole, and you couldn't even get the flashlight in it. And it was the wildest thing. So the lady that was my stepmom said, "Oh, there's a house over there at one time." And they were just covering up that was the old doors for the cellar. And I said, well, why would they take the time to put such big rocks in there, or big slabs of stone there? And she said, probably to keep nosy kids like you out. So, it was just really, it was a very strange yet fascinating place. So in that field was a little-known Civil War battle, and the farmer who was plowing that field started digging up human bones. They were also found under the driveways of some of the homes that were being built many decades ago. So they ended up for a while putting a star and a flag there to honor these people that were killed, and now there are houses there. The flag and the star are gone. The tree is gone. And there's a rolling slope of grass and houses, which I found a little egregious. So I was a little upset about that, but not much I can do because change happens.
So, yeah. Huh. It makes me wonder if there's underground tunnels that go to Right Pat, because you hear all the theories and whatnot about the goings on at Right Pat, and that's where the bodies from the crash at Roswell were supposedly taken, and whatnot.
Well, if you listen, when they talk about Right Pat, they talk about underground cave systems.
Oh yeah,
a lot of them talk about underground tunneling and the fact that they go out to different remote areas and different things like that. So it's kind of interesting to think about, for sure.
Well, that's also where the Super Soldier program was supposed to have taken place, was at Right Pat.
Dude, Right Pat was like Area 51 before Area 51. That's where everything
pretty much
was.
And there's so much speculation that Area 52 was actually Right Pat versus Dugway Proving Grounds. I don't know. It is what it is.
It would be interesting to take a tour, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested because what was so much closer to us and was that NASA Plumbrook station. So they said, oh, we're working on rocket propulsion systems, and we're doing cryogenics because we want to know how certain materials or particularly gases, will act in space. And I always thought that was a little funny because the DOD and the Army had control of that facility, and they eminent domained 44 families out of there, and they confiscated about 6,000 acres. And some of those people had lived there, their families had lived there for generations, and they were known as Firelanders from the War of 1812. And they came to the Western Reserve, and they were given these parcels of land where NASA Plumbrook Station is now sits. That place was decommissioned, and everybody practically jumped the fence in 1972, and they left their glasses, their cigars, their reading glasses, their coffee mugs, their paper. They were told, go, get out of here. So that leads me to believe something happened. We had a high rate of cancers. I lost friends at young ages from various types of cancers, particularly leukemias and bladder cancers. And now the site, there is a defense contracting company that's gone in there, but it's still under the control of the DOD. So they've recently poured millions of dollars into it, and and that's fine. It just makes me wonder though if some of what we did see, what were we really seeing paranormal stuff, or were we too the victims of maybe a grander experiment?
So. And that's what Dennis here in the chat room was bringing up, was that is MK real, MK Ultra is real, but are the after effects of the victims real or perhaps ongoing from the experiments that happened? You know, so
yeah, well, but the trauma is no less.
So absolutely.
Yeah.
And there was talks about MK Ultra, one of their experiments being that they put LSD and other things into rural area water supplies.
Right.
And
that's supposedly part of where fluoride is.
And I wonder sometimes if some of the experiences that people have, not that they are not real in their own mind and everything like that, but are maybe effects of the LSD or whatever that was in the drinking water itself. So.
Right, and I wonder too about holographic experiments, cloaking experiments. I've read a lot of Nikola Tesla's work, and not all of his papers have been declassified. So when I check, some of the stuff what I'm able to check that he was working on, and I know he died penniless, and I know that, he actually, a lot of people don't realize this too, he once worked for Thomas Alva Edison. And Thomas Alva Edison he was born in Milan, Ohio, and he lived maybe a mile from that facility, which I always thought was kind of crazy. And they started that facility, that NASA Plumbrook Station, as a munitions facility back in the 1940s for the war effort.
So you bring up holograms, and it makes me wonder. So we've had abductees that describe a hologram experience, and we attributed it to an implant that the specific alien races were actually implanting them with, which gave them a holographic experience. And they're supposed to be downloads from that specific race. But what if those holograms were actual CIA and not alien at all?
Right, and that's kind of what, so I try to examine everything. I know what I saw as a kid. I haven't really, I've lived here in Florida for almost 20 years. I haven't really experienced anything that I could equate as paranormal here. And I've been here for 20 years. I've been alone in my house at night when a lot of paranormal activity seems to take place. Nothing out of the ordinary other than black helicopters flying over the house now and then taking place. So there are more stories. Do you want to hear them?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go right ahead. Because we'll get more into the government and MK Ultra and whatnot in a second hour.
Okay. So one night I was about 16 years old, same farm, and I'm sleeping, and I woke up because I just woke up, and I looked over at my doorway, and I saw a blue light being in the doorway. I could not make out any discerning features, couldn't tell if it was male or female. It was faceless. It was just a blue light being. I was overcome with a feeling of love and peace. There was no fear at all. But I remember being curious, and I said, Mom, because that's what I called my stepmom. I said, Mom, and no answer. And I said, Ken, who was my brother. And I ran to the doorway, and I just got out of bed, ran right toward it, and waved my arm through the doorway, and there was nothing. And I looked across the hall, and I thought, oh, you silly BA, it's just the light it's shining through your brother's window into the hallway and into your room. Well, I got back in bed, and I turned around, and I looked at the doorway again, and that's when I shivered and shuddered, because I was like, what I saw was a being. It was not, it was there, it stood there, it watched me, and then it was gone. So that was a crazy thing. So another night down the road, it was across the field and down the road, I used to babysit for a family, and I had gone there, and I was doing the dishes one night. Two weird things happened there. So I was doing the dishes one night, and this was an old farmhouse. Actually, three weird things happened. So I'm doing the dishes one night. I put the kids to bed, and I'm drying the plates, and someone just taps me on the shoulder. They just tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around in frustration, ready to yell at one of the kids who had gotten out of bed. Imagine my shock when there was nobody there. And I remember thinking, I don't want to babysit here anymore. So another time we were all up, and I said, "Oh," and we saw a light outside. I didn't even bother to check, and then we heard someone, and it was snowing, and we heard someone come up on the porch, and they turned the door handle, and I said, "Oh, your mom's home already," and then nobody came in, and I opened I peered the curtain back from the window because it had a glass. It was an old farmhouse, and it had a glass door with a big valance hanging down, and I pulled it back, and I was like, okay, there's nobody out here. And I looked out, and there's no tracks because there was snow. There were no footprints.
Right.
So that was a really strange experience. And then the third thing that happened at that house was I was there one night, and upstairs, like they had like this third floor that they didn't really use too much. Kids were in bed. I was on the first floor, and I heard a baby crying. Well, they didn't have babies. These kids were like, they were like 8, 9, and 10 or whatever they were. And they didn't have a baby. And I'm like, where is this baby coming from? And then I thought, maybe it's one of the kids. And I go up to the second floor, and then I hear it above me on the third floor. And I'm like, no way in hell am I going up there. And it was a baby crying. and it was so scary, and it was just like, what is going on? Well, of course, at 16, I start thinking, oh, I'm getting sick like my mom. That's what's happening. I'm getting sick like my mom. And I didn't feel that way. And then I'm like, do crazy people know they're crazy? And I would try to reason with myself as a young kid, and or as a teenager. And this was a lot to carry around, but then there were other people who also had things happen. So my stepmom was getting dressed one night, and they had, in their master bedroom, they had a window, and anybody could walk up to that window and like look in. So she did have curtains, but I guess she had it cracked, and we were so rural that, and especially back then, a lot of people didn't lock their doors, and they just didn't do that. And she was getting ready for bed, and I'm upstairs, and this blood-curdling scream, she left loose with this scream, and she's never been that kind of woman. She's always been, pretty quiet and subdued. And she lets out with this scream, and the man I thought was my dad ran out with a gun, and the sheriff was called, and, they took a report and everything calmed down. And they said, well, it must have been a peeping Tom maybe or something. And she did not tell me until years later. She said it wasn't human. It had red eyes, and it was wearing a Union soldier cap. Huh. And so that was always really, really strange. And then we also live in an area that have the burial mounds. So when the area was first settled around Plum Brook Station, where they eminent domained all those lands, if you go back in the stories of the 1800s, when they were given those lands and they were starting to build their homesteads and plow fields, they found Native American burial grounds, but the Native Americans were buried sitting up, and they were facing west. So I always thought that was a really interesting story. And then there were a couple of stories, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding this, but there are quite a few old stories about giants in Ohio, and they were in Indiana and allegedly other places, and the Smithsonian allegedly came in and they took all the skeletons away, and there's a lot of controversy about that. But when you look at the old stories, there were so many of them. And yes, could they have been written to be sensorial? Of course. But I look at those and I read them, and I read the way they were written back then, and I'm like, And then there were pictures that were drawn, and of course they didn't have the photographs, which is a shame, but there were drawings that were done. And some of the people claimed, that these skeletons, these skulls were so big you could fit them over your head. And I often wonder too, well, maybe they didn't find maybe they thought they were Native Americans, but when they asked the Iroquois or the Wyandots who are these people, they said they're not of our kindred. So I often wondered, are they some group more ancient? Is it extraterrestrial, or is it perhaps descendants of that Bigfoot I saw, or whatever it was I saw? So, but we don't have any bones. So.
Right. And you hear about the red-headed giants in Kentucky, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you wonder if they're just an ancient race that was here before human.
Oh man, if you go back in time and you listen to all of the stuff on giants, it's almost impossible to not think that there was some form of giant alive at some point. There's just way too many things biblically and history-wise that are saying, yes, there is a race of giants. So,
right, you have, and then in Peru they have a legend too. They had red-headed pale giants, and they talked about the red-headed pale giants there, and then explorers allegedly ran into them too out in the prairie lands, and then I know that. There's a story, and you guys can help me out here, about the Native Americans who sealed off some of the giants in a cave. They set it on fire because they said they were killing and eating their people. And I forget what. I forget what.
That was an Iroquois legend on those ones, but and then there's a lot of footprints in the rocks. What they would call the giant footprints everywhere. They got so many of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen those. And that's a scary thing when you're a kid to come up on that muddy footprint. Of course, I didn't know enough to make a plaster cast as, a 9-year-old going through the woods. But these were just very crazy things. And a lot of things that I self-contained, if you will. Because because the discredit campaigns are enormous, and you can't defend yourself against. You're David, defending yourself against a Goliath, and that's it's just like the Project MK Ultras and things like that. How do you go up against renowned scientists or psychiatrists that are running foundations? You don't. You're just thought of as crazy. So people get it too. Go ahead.
You can. You just wind up disappearing usually.
Yeah, you either disappear or you end up put away somewhere because of the fact that can't possibly happen. We don't want people to know that was happening.
Nope,
so we're going to take this person and put them here. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we as teenagers, we'd go out, and I know this might surprise all of you, but I used to smoke weed and drink beer.
No way.
We would never.
Never. No. S4 does not condone the use of...
Oh, we do. It's legal here.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
What is?
Huh? So I remember an incident.
What's weed?
What?
Marijuana.
Oh.
What's marijuana?
Yeah.
So as a teenager, we used to hang out. Sometimes we would go to the Monroeville Cemetery, and one night we were there, and it was and we were being goofy, and we were drinking. We were a little bit into our weed and our cups. So, but the thing that we remember is that all of a sudden you could hear things like whispers, and voices. They're like voices, but it was kind of like I can't even do it. And then the wind came up, and the leaves started kicking up around our feet, and it was so sudden. It wasn't like it wasn't anything like there was a breeze, and then there was a strong wind, and then there was a storm. It was just, and then what changed was the vibration, the energy, the frequency there. And it was like, we got to go now. It wasn't good. It was like evil run us through here, and we got to go. And we did. We hightailed our asses out of there. One time we came up over, we were driving at night, and I still remember I was with the superintendent's son, and we were, and there were two other kids in the back, and we came up over this hill, and there was a hooded figure standing in the middle of the road that just pointed at us. And he slammed his brakes, and he turned his car like we were in the movies. It was some of the best defensive driving I've ever seen. And he spun that car around, and we were out of there. And it was crazy. So it was yeah. I get shudders when I think about it today. Yeah.
So, growing up, did you ever encounter any UFO activity?
We did. So we saw. So I don't know. I wouldn't call it UFOs. I have friends in that area who have. The closest that I ever came were these orbs. They were like glowing white or red orbs, and that was the closest I ever saw. No alien abductions that I can recall or remember or anything like that. So, but yeah, that's the extent pretty much of some of the stuff that.
So the blue light beam does kind of intrigue me, because it does. If you have the feeling of love and peace, reminds me of the it reminds me of the Pleiadian race, because that's what a lot of the Pleiadian experiencers talk about.
Mm-hmm. Ah, okay. Yeah, it was. It was a very. I felt very safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that sounds very Pleiadian to me. You won't get to experience that so much with spirits or other entity types, but Pleiadians, yeah. And they are usually a blue light beam type race from experience.
I'll look more into them. Yeah,
that's kind of cool. I kind of want one of those.
What?
One of those blue light beams that makes everybody feel love and peace. I'd just be shining it on everybody as I walk by. Here you go. Yeah, having a bad day? Love and peace, guys.
So
it was strange. I remember little things, and there were two incidents before we moved to that farm. I lived in a little ranch house in a neighborhood, and I was really young. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And I remember I was in bed at night, and I rolled over, and you know how you fling your arm or your hand off the side of the bed? Somebody started stroking my hand, and I was like, oh, that feels good. And I just lay there, and then I realized nobody's in here. And I pulled my hand away, and I started screaming, and my grandmother came in, and she was calming me and telling me, no, look, there's nothing under the bed, there's nothing in the closet. And then another time, whatever it was softly pulling my hair, like putting it in a ponytail and letting the hand run down to the end of the hair and then doing it again, like very gently. And I was very young then too. But those were the first two, and I screamed again because it frightened me, and my grandmother was concerned I was having night terrors of some sort. So, but yeah, that started when I was like 4 or 5, and then nothing until that I can recall until we got to the farm.
So I'm curious. So you studied government, you studied politics, and keeping on the UFO topic, do you have an opinion on why the government would keep disclosure so secretive? And now all of a sudden, in the middle of a pandemic, they're going to bring up, the Pentagon has an off-world craft. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that a lot of it is distract. And, we're plebeians, right? If you don't have a need to know, you're not going to. So, I think for a lot of things, it was a matter of these very deep, when you talk about the private military industrial intelligence complex, that's a pretty big thing. So you've got people that are working on weaponry, like cloaking devices. And that's what I always think about with Nikola Tesla. And I think he successfully hit on a cloaking device that probably wasn't perfect, but I think there were some people in our government who certainly did perfect it. And I think that a lot of this is they're not telling us because I think someone in government once told me that they were 30 to 50 years ahead of the general public on technology.
Right.
Think about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they use companies like DARPA and what's one of the other ones? But DARPA is the main one I think of because they are the ones that came out with the Dragon cloaking device. Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
They
privatize it now.
Yeah.
So if they do want the general public to actually know what they're doing, they privatize it and they have it come out from a company for the new iPhone 25. It's $200, whatever.
Well,
right, and
not to mention,
and that's how they make it proprietary too. So if you have a project, a governmental project that you would like to enhance or work on, what is the best thing to do? You run it through a cutout company. You run it through a cutout. So you grab hold of a private entity, and now it becomes a trade secret, and now it becomes proprietary. And now you don't know, and then we've got
now you don't have to do the declassification, and you don't have to, share information.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And it's all a matter of national security. They can't tell you this or that because it's national security. I do think that a lot of the UFO, they're ruses, the UFO sightings, some of the abductions. I'm not saying that some of them aren't real. So let me say that most distinctly, that there are some that cannot be explained. I think that scares the shit out of our government or certain sectors of our government because they probably are, if they got here, they're probably so far advanced from us. And that it may be us who's being controlled. And by us, I mean some members of government.
Right.
So, but they may have, but our government too, or other governments, not just our government, may have learned from that and said, you know what, we can do what do they call that, Eric? I'm having a word finding issue now.
Reverse engineering?
A false flag. No,
false flag.
Oh,
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the false flag alien invasion because it's supposed to be a holographic sky supposedly.
That happened over a radio broadcast quite a few years ago.
No, they're supposed to do a holographic in the sky style. I can't remember what they call it though.
Oh, like a laser light show, except, hey, guess what? Look at
it,
aliens are fighting each other.
Yeah.
That would be terrifying to wake up to.
Right?
Well,
look, it's Independence Day.
Think, yeah. And then there are, the reports of, where you hear about military people, they see things, and military people see things, and then these men in black come in, and they and they're told, you don't say a word, you don't say anything. And that's where I think these are deeply classified projects, and maybe they're doing some sort of experiment that's akin to an MK Ultra, and they're exposing their own military people to it just for psyops, maybe, or for some other, So, and then they're told you can't say anything.
You didn't see anything. That was swamp gas. It's cool.
Weather balloon.
Yeah, right. Right. So I do tend to think that we're probably experimented on more than we will ever know. and
for sure.
They've done bio warfare testing on certain U.S. cities. They were just enough to make you sick, not enough to kill you. But they've admitted, the CIA's admitted they used American cities for biotesting. So hands down, we'll get more of the MK Ultra here in the next hour. Mm-hmm. So on that note, we will go ahead and go to break, and we'll come back. More MK Ultra with B.A. Crisp.
You are listening to S4 on Spreaker.com.
host, Eric Cooper.
And welcome back to S4, where we have B.A. Crisp, and we're about to start talking MK Ultra, which we talked a little bit about MK Ultra earlier in the show, but MK Ultra and human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Are you back, B.A.?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Sorry
excellent.
about that. I was actually looking at. I actually have 1995 testimony from an MK Ultra victim, and I think I can play it. It's audio that's about 5 minutes long. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah.
It's her testimony. And let me tell me if I've got this up as loud as I can. If you can't hear it, I'll stop.
Do you have the rights to this?
Well, it's actually public. Is it
public domain?
It's actually on a public site. Yeah.
Perfect.
It's in the
Okay,
public
that's all we
domain.
need.
Okay. Yeah. Just making sure.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah,
is this is from a child trafficking case.
Yes. So, well, it's not a child trap. Well, in a way, it was. But she was
Right.
one of the MK Ultra victims who.
Okay.
So, if you go back to the 1960s and 70s, there was a British psychiatrist by the name of Donald Ewan Cameron, and he
Right.
was the creator of something called psychic driving, or a psychic driving concept.
Okay.
And what his hope was is that what he hypothesized, it wasn't his hope. He wanted to correct schizophrenia by erasing existing memories and reprogramming the psyche, but in the ways that it sounds so noble in theory, but the ways that he did that would be human rights violations, I think.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So,
Right.
So they were absolutely terrible. So he did experiment with LSD, which was a pretty common thing to do. But he also did electroconvulsive therapy at 30 to 40 times the normal power. So his driving experiments consisted of putting subjects into like drug-induced comas for sometimes 50 days at a time. Or I think one woman was put into a coma for 90 days. Nothing wrong with her. So imagine that. Imagine how awful that would be. And while they were in a coma, he would play tape loops of noise or repetitive statements. And then the experiments, and what was really bad about this is, somebody may be suffering from mild depression or postpartum depression or some minor anxiety disorder, and he would grab them and throw them into these experiments where now they're suffering permanent effects from his actions. So victims experience things like incontinence, amnesia, they forgot how to talk, they forgot their parents, and they also had termination cases. So there were people that died, and and we'll never know exactly who they were. So Dr. Cameron became known as the first chairman of the World Psychiatric Association, as well as the president of both the American and Canadian Psychiatric Associations. To me, that's kind of scary.
Yeah, because the CIA had a lot of reach over in Canada as well with the MK Ultra project.
All right, so let me see. I'm going to put this on speakerphone, and I'm going to see if I can pick up her testimony here, and if you guys can hear it, let me know. Or if you can't hear it, let me know. If somebody yell or something. All right, hang on. Here and play.
In 1984, I became a pawn in the government scheme. His ultimate goal was mind control and to create the perfect spy. All through the use of chemicals, radiation, drugs, signals, electric shock, isolation in tubs of water, sleep deprivation, brainwashing, verbal, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. I was exploited unwittingly for nearly 3 decades of my life, and the only explanations given to me were that, quote, the end justifies the means, and, quote, I was serving my country in their bold effort to fight communism. I can only summarize my circumstances by saying they took an already abused 7-year-old child and compounded my suffering beyond belief. The saddest part is, I know for a fact that I was not alone. There were countless other children in my same situation, and there was no one to help us until now. I've already submitted as much information as possible, including conversations overheard of the people, agencies responsible. I'm able to report all this to you in such detail because of my photographic memory and the arrogance of the doctors, the arrogance of the people involved. They were certain they would always control my mind. Although the process of recalling these atrocities is not an easy one, nor is it without some danger to myself and my family, I feel the risk is worth taking. Dr. L. Wilson Green, who claims to have received $50 million from the Edgewood Chemical and Radiology Laboratory as part of the TSG, or Technical Science Division of the CIA, once described to Dr. Charles Brown that, quote, children were used as subjects because they were more fun to work with and cheaper, too. They needed lower profile subjects than soldiers or government people, so only young, willing females would do. Besides, he said, I like scaring them. They in the agency think I'm a god, creating subjects and experiments for whatever deviant purposes Sid and James can think of.
Well, that came through okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, it angers me beyond belief the fact that we even have government agencies like the CIA that even thought it was remotely okay to practice this kind of crap. You know, using enemy POWs, EPWs was bad enough, let alone to use our own citizens.
Right, without any consent or knowledge.
Oh, absolutely.
And our tax money paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
And our tax money paid for it. So, yeah, it's it's egregious to me. So it gets, some of the things that they did do back then were there was another doctor who did experiments with microchips, and they would implant them in dogs and cats so that they could run their behavior. They'd stop them and start them and use them like remote control toys by implanting these implants in animals, but then they moved to humans too. And that's very little of that is talked about. And some of the things that a lot of people don't know with MK Ultra is that it's alleged that Ken Kesey, who wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
mm-hmm.
he volunteered for an MK Ultra experiment involving LSD at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Menlo Park while he was a student at Stanford. And his experience under the influence of LSD inspired him to promote that drug outside of MK Ultra. And there was another gentleman by the name of Robert Hunter, and I guess he hung out with Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead. He was a songwriter and a translator, and he also did the MK Ultra test. He was an MK Ultra test subject in Stanford. Boston mobster Jane Whitey Bulger, him too, and he said that he was subjected to, I know some sources say weekly, but it's alleged that he was actually subjected to daily doses of LSD, and he would see all kinds of creatures in his cell, and he lost, he had no appetite, and it made him very ill. And then what a lot of people don't know is Ted Kaczynski, the American domestic terrorist known as the Unabomber, was said to be a subject of a psychological study that some people have said were part of MK Ultra. He was a sophomore at Harvard when he participated in a study that it was a purposely brutalizing psychological experiment led by a psychologist named Henry Murray. And Kaczynski spent 200 hours as part of this study. And Sirhan Sirhan, who assassinated Robert F. Kennedy, they believed that Sirhan was operating under some MK Ultra mind control technique, which, that's, you can never prove any of this stuff. But it's something that, if they were doing this, and they were, it makes you say,
So how many of these psychologists, psychiatrists do you think came from Operation Paperclip?
Well, and that's interesting, too, because there were more than 1,000 scientists out of Germany after World War II who had their backgrounds whitewashed, and they were brought to the United States. So I wouldn't have any idea, how to postulate, what that number might be.
Yeah, it just makes you wonder, because some of them went to went to experiment with biohazards. Some of them went for rocket science. Some went for mind control, MK Ultra, and the list goes on. And we treat them like heroes today, but in all reality, they were war criminals.
Right. Well, and a lot of people didn't know, and as we age, and and we live in this age of information, and we carry around what I call our little pocket slots, where we click, and scroll. Yeah. It becomes that all of that knowledge, that history goes away, right? Time covers over all things. So we have a lot of young people out there who don't realize what happened with World War II, what happened with some of our soldiers, what it takes place with all these experiments. So yeah.
Well, it's all part of dumbing down society. They take a lot of the history out of our kids' history books today of what really happened.
No more civics lessons.
No. Yeah. Well, and I mean, history alone, they barely scratch the surface of history.
Mm-hmm. Right. And a lot of young people too. I'm sure you've heard of Frank Olson, who worked at Fort Detrick, which is a biowarfare facility. Mm-hmm. It's been renamed. Mm-hmm. And that was the same facility where they were also doing MK Ultra experiments on prisoners there that worked on those farms near there. And they would inject them with all sorts of things, quote, just to see what happened. Yeah. So Frank Olson happened to be, he was either a chemist, he was a doctor of some sort, but not a medical doctor, I don't believe. And, and that was his family. It took them decades to prove. He was slipped LSD at a party, and he already suffered from minor depression. And then I think it was months later, he wound up allegedly flinging himself 13 stories out of a New York window, which always seems the most popular way to go, right? It's like, how many people have fallen out of windows? And there were a lot of questions regarding that. And the gentleman that was with him, that was probably some sort of handler, he alleged that, I was asleep in the next bed, I didn't hear a thing. So he was in the same room with the guy.
Right.
So,
I'm trying to think. And that was common. Even within the CIA, agents were slipping LSD to their coworkers.
Yes.
For experimentation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
Which I believe, and then I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but there was one quote-unquote patient that was going to leak, and he also, again, wound up flying out a window. Mm-hmm. I can't remember his name, though.
Yeah, and there was also during the Vietnam War, we had a lot of people that were protesting the Vietnam War. So they actually talked about doing a project, and maybe they did it, I don't know, but they talked about flipping LSD and drugs, in framing someone basically, and targeting people who spoke out against the war, like Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and a few others. And ensuring that they were jailed or had some sort of criminal record so that they could be discredited. Which I just recently learned that, and I was like, wow, I had no idea. So it just is amazing to me that the lengths that some of the agencies will go against their own people, which I never thought you were supposed to do. So it leaves me with a lot of questions, and I can't help but be fascinated. And when I say that, I say it in a macabre kind of way, that this went on. The scale of the project was so big, and there were so many sub-projects, and it may still be taking place today. But, they recycle, and they get rid of the names, and they throw it under, it's kind of like the Atomic Energy Commission later becoming the Department of Energy. Because it's a boring-sounding name, and the Atomic Energy Commission took a lot of flack when they were doing nuclear power, and and there were safety concerns with the legitimate ones, I think, with the public, and at the time, and they just said, okay, we won't do it. We're going to dismantle this. Well, they just rolled it into the Department of Energy. So,
right.
Problem solved.
So we know that waterboarding came out of the CIA secret projects, which, I had to do a paper on, I'm trying to think of the term, extraditionary torture. And, it's scientifically proven that torture does not work. It's not viable. Because you torture someone for so long, they're going to tell you whatever the hell you want to know. So there's no reason for torture. But, I look at Abu Ghraib, where we had CIA agents in Abu Ghraib, and that was a day from hell. Most of those Iraqis that were in Abu Ghraib weren't even terrorists. They were just random people off the street that we were told to pick up. And
wow, I wasn't aware of that.
We actually created terrorists, because you look at those people. That was back in 2005. I was in Balad, and as soon as that story broke, the entire country erupted, because we were torturing innocent people. But when you at what point do you draw the line?
See,
and that's a great point.
That's where the problem is that nobody knows where to draw the line.
There shouldn't be a line to draw. Is the
there
point.
Shouldn't be. There shouldn't be, for sure. But when does the experiment outweigh the consequences? Okay, because unfortunately through these experiments, I mean, yes, we did really horrible crap. I'm not saying that we didn't do horrible stuff. All the Nazis and that, they did horrible stuff. But through all of these horrible things, it has come out with certain things that we use every day now, or that are medical advancements in the long run, that are X-ray technology, that's this kind of stuff that is now saving lives and accompanying this and that. So honestly, sometimes mad science leads to real science. You know what I mean? And I think there's enough of it that led to something good that they'll continue to do it, just because of the fact that there was okay outcomes for certain things.
But there's a difference between a willing volunteer, which there's plenty of, and the unwitting volunteer that has no idea what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no informed consent. But
that should be where the line is.
Yeah, I wonder too, because Eric, you said something, and then Kayla said, where do you draw the line? Well, it always seems that I don't think that the military intelligence industrialized complex could exist if they did not have an enemy to fight, right?
Right.
You put a lot of people out of jobs, and you put a lot of technology, it gets furloughed, it's done. And I think about that, and that saddens me too, that if we put as much effort into peace efforts as we do into our war efforts, the world would be a much better place. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I'm not saying, and I know years ago there were people that say, oh, I think there were some young ladies that said, oh, give those terrorists, they just need jobs. I think there are people that are pretty awful people out there that would kill us in a heartbeat, that would,
right.
They would love to come to, and we have some great defenders, that, some wolves, if you will, guarding the door, and we need wolves guarding the door. So in that effort, I'm grateful for, because there are instances where there are bad people out there that want to kill and maim and all that, and we can't just say, oh, let's all have a kumbaya moment and let's all have a big group hug. But on the other hand, how much of that do we foster? And by we, I don't just mean the U.S. I mean
right.
worldwide governments. How much of that do we foster, and we stir up the people with this patriotism and so that we feed them misinformation and propaganda, so that and not we, but that governments, so that they can go to war, so they have the backing of the people to go to war. And I look at all that and I go, wow, if we had no enemy to fight, we need an enemy to fight in order to thrive, and that's problematic too. Yeah. So, but the scale of the project of MK Ultra, and a lot of the stuff, as Kayla said, gets carried forward, and you might recognize some of this stuff. So they played with substances that would increase the efficiency of mental or physical capacity or perception. They measured the intoxicating, or they tried to prevent the intoxicating effects of alcohol. So they were trying to reverse engineer hangovers, which I thought, well, that's a good experiment. How
many millions were dumped into that?
Right. So, and then they tried to, and this is too where I think it benefits people who do appreciate peace and compassion and things like that. They tried to make the induction of hypnosis easier. So they did practice a lot and they practiced a lot in occult areas too, which was really surprising for me to learn. They also worked with, and they worked with substances which would help a person enhance their ability to withstand sensory deprivation, torture, coercion, or interrogation. So in other words, it'd be like, if I were your prisoner, whatever you threw at me, I could handle, kind of a thing. And they studied a lot of that, and they used a lot of soldiers for that. And they also did things like try to produce amnesia, and they succeeded in that. It was horrible what they did. There was one woman who couldn't remember anything from her birth to 1963. She was an adult, and she lost all of those. She lost half of her life memories due to some of these experiments. She was a civilian. She was not a willing volunteer, and to me that's cruel. That's cruel and inhumane to steal someone's memories like that, especially someone. And they would do physical methods. They would do shock, and they would do confusion. They would implant false memories. They took now this one. She did volunteer. She was a CIA case officer, and she volunteered for an experience where they actually convinced her that she was somebody else. And then they showed her own documentation. She goes, I don't even know who that person is, and she vehemently defended it for 5 minutes. And then they debriefed her and brought her back. And then and they said, this is what happened. And she said, that was my name, or that's the name you gave me. Anybody would have known that was fake. So it was kind of like a really weird reverse psychology experiment that they did. And that was just one. She wasn't a victim because she did volunteer for it. But I found that. But
even with those kind of cases, I wonder about the ramifications of it. You mess with the mind enough. I wonder if she ever had a problem with slipping back. And creating basically a multiple personality or a dual personality.
Or even
Yeah.
a form of dementia or
Yeah.
Alzheimer's later on in life due to the fact that you don't know who you actually are.
Right.
Right.
Or, you know,
Right.
you know who you are during the day, and then at night you're dreaming you're this other person that they created you, essentially.
Right.
Right. And there was some of that. So there were victims that were diagnosed. I believe in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, they called it multiple personality disorder. I think today they call it, in the DSM-5 or 6, they call it dissociative personality disorder, I think now. Yeah, and you know, and these people suffer that, so they do have you know, these multiple personalities, if you will, and they, in order to separate and compartmentalize the trauma that they suffered. The other thing that they did, they would induce paralysis of the legs, and they would also induce acute anemia, which I thought curious, and I'm wondering if that had to do with the radiation experiments. Like, I don't know why you would induce anemia. Maybe, you know, I haven't finished my research on that. So then they had a young boy who was in a mental hospital, and they did a brain implant on him, and I'm trying to think of the doctor's name who did that. I've lost it, but so they would put these brain implants. He actually put this brain implant in this kid, and it produced a euphoric pleasure. It hit the pleasure center of his brain, and within a 15-minute period, he responded to the stimulation of this pleasure center, where he could push a button and get it no less than 1,500 times in the 15-minute period. And when he was being taken, when they were told, shut it down, you know, quit because you're going to exhaust him, he was like, no, he fought it. He begged them not to take that away, so he could continue just like a rat, just pushing the button over and over again to experience this pleasure. And that's horrifying to me. It's like something out of a horror. It's like a slash horror sci-fi movie.
It almost creating an addiction.
Yeah. And you know, and they introduce substances. They practice with substances to lower ambition and working efficiency of you know, and they would try to administer whatever drugs, and I don't know what these cocktails yet were, but undetectable amounts that they would clandestinely administer to people working to see if they could lower their ambition and working efficiency. Now you're screwing with somebody's ability to make a living. Yeah. And it's like, you know, great for you because you're being paid a lot of money to do this. So how wonderful for you, and how fucked up to do this to somebody who's just trying to support their family. Especially someone that you have taken an oath to, and you've sworn to protect and defend this country. What does that mean to you? Does it mean just the rocks and trees, or does it mean the people who live here too? Right. So you know, I think about that. They worked with a knockout pill, which can be administered in drinks, food, and cigarettes. And I have to wonder, you know, is that where our, you know, what is it that the date rape drug that they pour, you know, in drinks? Did that come from them? Yeah, did that kind of?
They probably created it. To be honest with you,
I don't know how to put this though. It was just since the beginning of time, since as far back as we can remember, there has been documentation of different people doing different experiments on different tribes, on different people within their own race, everything like this. This goes back. This isn't just like a U.S. concept. This isn't just a concept of the New World. This is something that has happened since the beginning of time. Like people, well, what would happen if I hit him with this stick? Well, what would happen if, you know, different things like that. I mean, they obviously get worse with the technology. Exactly. They get worse with the technology that we increase because of the fact that now we can mess with this part instead of just the physical part. You know, we can start messing with the emotions, the mental, everything like that. But this is definitely something that's been going on forever.
Where
Yeah,
does the trafficking side come in?
So, for me, what happened was while I was in graduate school, and this is very interesting too. So when I was in graduate school at George Washington University, and I was working, I wasn't in the clubs anymore. I wasn't dancing anymore, but I still worked with a lot of the people that were in the clubs and the club owners. So one of the things that I did many years ago was help them forge a trade association. So they are actually federally registered as a 501c6 trade association, and I wanted to do that because they are a marginalized group, and NGOs, law enforcement officers, elected officials all say, they don't actually say they're a vulnerable population. What they do is they say strippers are. It depends on what the political motive of the day is. So when you want to turn the public's head away from something that you might be doing, you focus on the strippers and you implement laws like you can't walk within 6 feet of a guy, or we're going to charge you at a club, or we're going to charge you with a first-degree misdemeanor and put you in jail for 30 days. Those were some real legislation. That was real legislation that was written. And
Right.
it's like to combat human trafficking. How does that protect a victim of human trafficking by putting a dancer in jail for 30 days for walking within 6 feet of a customer? I don't understand that. So I started.
And that's the thing. They're trying to change, and it's never gonna happen. But they are trying to change society's concept that most of your prostitutes are victims. They're not prostitutes. But that concept won't take because of. I blame religion. Honestly, I do.
You blame who?
Religion, because women are always undermined in most of your religions. And so, with that, it's a man's world kind of ideology. You're never going to.
Well, there is. It's patriarchal. It is. There is a little bit of patriarchy going on there.
Right.
And then you have. So what people don't realize, though, is that these NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations like charities, who receive lots of government money, lots of federal assistance, especially if they have friends in D.C., in a lot of cases, they are forced to sign a piece of paper before they get their grant money that says, we will not make a distinction between sex work and sex trafficking. We're going to treat it all the same. Have fun. Here's your money. Here's your check. So, and then it's everyone's a victim. Everyone's a victim. And there's an over-focus on Caucasian women being taken. And I'm not saying that never happens. Victims come in all colors, races, creeds, ages, and sex. So everyone tends not to think about the boy victims. So to answer your question, as a graduate student at George Washington University, I, with the help of a law enforcement officer, developed a program because everyone was saying sex trafficking is prevalent in clubs. It's just running rampant. And I thought, why do I even know what sex trafficking is? Do I know what human trafficking is? And the answer was no. And then when I found out, I thought, wow, there's no one, I don't know of any dancers in my club that were ever grabbed by the hair and pulled into the club and thrown up on stage. There was no force, fraud, or coercion. And as we studied this, what we did realize is that in some cases we did have underage girls because of a lack of people checking up IDs. Or if they did check IDs, they were very good fake IDs. So, then you would wind up with an underage person at the club, which is not cool. And nobody who has a club says, oh, let me stock it with underage girls. They'd be out of business. They know it. They're going to get shut down. They're going to have to make millions of dollars in restitution, and it's not a good profit model. And it's, and a lot of people don't think about that. And then they say, well, they're all giving guys happy endings and they're all doing, really? Because they're not going to risk their what good does it do to give a guy a happy ending in a club? Because what happens once he's happy? He leaves. He doesn't spend money. He's gone. So, and people don't think about that. They just have this idea planted in their head. So we developed a program, and I thought, why don't we have law enforcement officers come in and do lead trainings on how to recognize human trafficking, because we don't want the clubs being used as a conduit for that kind of crime.
Right.
So what we did was we went to the FBI first, and we said, hey, we got this program, and blah, and they're like, you want us to do what? Hell no, we're not coming in. No, we don't want to meet with those people. And it was like, really? Why? Because you're saying we're the problem. And then it was actually Homeland Security investigations who really stepped up. So for listeners who don't know what Homeland Security investigations is, it's not ICE. It's not ICE. It's the largest investigative arm of the U.S. government. They're the second largest law enforcement organization on the globe. And they do investigations. And what I like about them is they have victims assistance specialists, and they take a victim-centered approach to helping victims with food, with housing, with job skills, with counseling, with substance abuse. And they really take the time. The agents do the investigative part, and the victims assistance specialists really tend to those victims. So they came to us and said, well, actually what happened was I was called to DHS headquarters, and I got to meet with, at the time, it was the Honorable Alice Hill. And I was told I'd get 5 or 10 minutes with her, and a snowstorm blew in, probably one of the worst snowstorms I'd seen in D.C. in a long time. And I wound up with her for 90 minutes. So we did our presentation, and she was very silent, and I thought, oh, shit, she hates us.
Right.
And she was very silent. She gave me the awkward 20-second silence, I call it. And she said, I love it. Give her she told her other agents, give her what she needs to make this happen. And we did. So we've trained thousands, like I think maybe around 20,000 people who work in the industry in all across the U.S., sometimes multiple times, on how to recognize the indicators of human trafficking. So it's been a rewarding thing, and we've actually had tips called in, by either club owners or by managers or by dancers, and they will report. And we've had instances where it's not necessarily coming from the club. It's, hey, I have a friend who knows a friend, and it's this. Or there was one instance where there were 4 traffickers that were wanted in Colorado, and they showed up at a club in Florida, and the young lady had been checking after she took our program. She'd been checking the newswire services. She was a manager at the club, and she called me and she said, these people are in our club, and what should I do? So of course, we called HSI. So it's things like that. Another instance where a man in Denver had just gone through, like 2 days before he'd gone through our training program, and an older lady and a younger lady came into the club, and they wanted the younger one to apply for the job. So he's watching the camera that shows the lobby, and his first thing is, they're not standing together. Why aren't they standing together? If someone's applying for a job and they're friends, I would think that they would be close, and she'd be saying, gee, do you think I'll get the job? Oh, I'm so nervous, or whatever. None of that going on. So he comes down and he starts talking, and the older woman, and that's the other thing a lot of people don't realize, that women can be traffickers too.
No, absolutely.
And now they probably do with Ghislaine, the whole Ghislaine Maxwell alleged, all the allegations that are that she's facing. But but so this woman did all the talking, was holding this lady's the other girl's documentation. So he did a smart thing. He separated them. He said, I need to talk to her for a minute and get her to fill out some paperwork. So she fills out the paperwork. He takes a photo of her ID, because that's required now in 22 states. He takes a photo of the ID, and then he calls HSI, and he asks her, he says, why do you want to work here? And the young lady says, because she's making me. And she actually said that. And that doesn't usually happen. Usually they're given a legend, a cover story. Right. And they stick to that thing like glue, like super glue. So they leave. He said, I can't put her up on stage tonight. Can you come back tomorrow at 7 o'clock? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. So they come back, and he turns everything into HSI. They quickly intervene because if it's a minor, she can't consent. Turned out she had a very good fake ID. She was 16 years old. Mm-hmm. So and they saved her. And she was.
That's what a lot of folks don't understand is you bring up human trafficking or sex trafficking to just a random person on the street, they automatically assume it's only happening overseas.
Right.
It's happening all around us here all the time.
Right. The U.S. is the biggest consumer for the sex trafficking product, and that's what human beings are viewed as commodities. And so, what was surprising to me, I actually did. I worked with the Science and Technology Directorate at HSI on a foundational effort on human trafficking. And what we were doing, it was a program agnostic study, and we were examining different industries because trafficking happens everywhere. They've even found trafficking victims in a church out of Texas. So, kind of to go with your religion thing, it happens everywhere.
Yeah.
And nail salons, hair salons, factories, farms, private residences. Even here in Naples, we had 2 doctors who had a woman that had lived with them for almost 20 years who was locked up, and she was only allowed to go to church on Sunday, and it was a new pastor that recognized the fact that something wasn't right, and he did some investigation. And she was taken, she was brought here from a foreign country, was not paid for her services, was forced to sleep in a closet and eat out of that closet, whatever they decided to give her. So, there are different types of trafficking. There's sex trafficking, domestic trafficking, agricultural trafficking. There's child soldiers, which we really don't have in the U.S. That's more in countries like Darfur.
Right.
There's organ trafficking. There are people who are, taken for their organs, and some of those organs were actually located at a hospital in New York where wealthy people were paying a lot of money to just, because they needed an organ for an operation, and if they had the cash,
right,
somehow somebody wound up taken off the streets and they got their organ. So, those are things, that talk about a creepy Halloween story. Yeah.
So where do you by chance know the human trafficking tip line?
Yes, but yes. Hang on one second. I've got this.
So let's let our listeners know the tip line if they do suspect human trafficking going on, and then go ahead and plug your organization that you run, and then we'll talk about your books for about 5 minutes, and we'll be at the top of the hour.
Okay, sure. And you caught me off guard, Eric.
I'm sorry.
Cards. Yeah. Well, if you go to ICE.gov and you type in human trafficking,
right,
you can find that number. They do have a hotline, And I don't want to give out any private agents' phone numbers, and those are the only cards. And I didn't know you were going to ask me this.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, yeah, and all they really have to do is look up Homeland Security and go to the DHS website.
Right, and I do think, too, oh, wait, I think I just found it. Yes. Oh, wait.
No, that's a private agent.
Well, it's 1-866-347-2423, and I believe you can text "Be Free" too. That you're able to text that too, but I can look that up on the computer real quick because they change stuff all the time.
So I got here that it's the Human Trafficking for the United States number is 1-888-373-7888. Okay. And you can also text them at 233-733. And it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Perfect.
Yes.
So
Thank you so much, Kayla. I owe you a drink.
So I always thought ICE was the investigative arm. So HSI is the actual investigative arm of Homeland Security?
Yes, Homeland Security Investigations is the investigative arm. ICE tends to primarily focus on borders and only borders. So HSI does a lot of things like transactional crimes, financial crimes, illicit crimes and terrorism,
white collar crimes,
human trafficking, counterfeiting in goods, not treasury like fake counterfeit money, but counterfeiting of goods like those fake Gucci purses that come into port and stuff like that.
And that's interesting too. I don't think a lot of people realize that Secret Service actually is the counterfeiting arm of the government.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
the arm of the. Yeah, when I was in school, I didn't realize that. I figured it'd be the IRS or someone that focused more on
Treasury.
Yeah,
right.
Treasury.
Mm-hmm.
Not the Secret Service, but Secret Service is actually the counterfeiting investigative branch.
And that's true. And my father-in-law. So I'm married to somebody who used to be a law enforcement officer, and my father-in-law is a retired Secret Service agent. Mm-hmm. So he would share stories with me about counterfeiting in different areas of the U.S. and some of the cases that he worked on decades ago. And pretty fascinating guy, and pretty fascinating history too. So.
All right. So, what got you into writing? Everyone's got an inspiration. So, what was your inspiration for writing books?
So, my inspiration was more cathartic. It was doing a 180 or it was coming full circle. So, and not a 180, but it was coming full circle and wanting to re-explore some of the things that had happened in my childhood. And I started writing it in a memoir format, and I thought, this isn't working for me. So, and maybe I wasn't quite ready for that yet. And as I did this, I joined a writers group for 3 years. It took me 6 years to write Redbird. So it was a culmination of things. It was studying the human trafficking and learning about that. It was my past and some of the weird stuff that had gone on. It was also about being, I was a foster kid, and I have a strong female protagonist who starts off in life as a foster kid, and she's 16 years old, and the book starts off in 1984. So there's a lot of nostalgia there, and she's a very hurt, traumatized, and rebellious young lady, and there's a lot going on with her. And I don't want to give too much away, but she ends up being remanded. She's picked up by two British scientists. One's a psychiatrist, and one works on nuclear propulsion systems. And they're married. They're a married couple. And she's taken to this farm where she is growing up, or she's introduced to other children, and they have to make, they have to come to terms with themselves. But what one she finds curious is they're all from all over the world, and she doesn't understand that. And the other thing is there are things going on that farm that she doesn't understand. So it gets pretty deep into that. So it's loosely, very loosely based on the early part of my life. And in the series, she actually grows up through the series and goes to work as a CIA case officer. And then it's some of the experiences that she has on a special task force. So it's kind of, I've done a lot of research trying to get things right, and I hope any readers who do pick it up, if I get a detail wrong, please school me, because I love that.
And where can we find your book?
Okay, so you can get the book. You can get it on Amazon. You can also get it at they have it at Barnes and Noble. It's Dymox, because I think you guys are global. You told me. So it's Dymox in Australia, and it's carried at Blackwell's in the UK as well.
Excellent.
Good deal.
And so you have, what, about 10 books?
I only have, this is my first book. The second one just went to the editor. Yeah, and the second one just went to the editor. We're thinking, I wanted to get it out by December, but when it comes to covers and titles, and I can't tell you guys the title yet, but we did just settle on a title, and we're looking at cover work, and so book 2 will be coming out. It'll be at the beginning of the new year.
Okay, good deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's just that's a continuation of the same series? Book 2?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And what's the future look like? So, are you going to continue writing?
Oh my gosh, I hope so, because I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm hoping that I can spend all my time writing.
Perfect.
Good deal.
Perfect. And how's your organization doing?
You mean the trade association?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's they've had it's been tough. COVID has been tough, and a lot of people are suffering, and it's hit them hard. So we have had 7 suicides, of which I know, a couple of attempted suicides, people living out of their car, people who can't feed their kids, people who have lost their apartments or their homes now, and all of these stories, and substance abuse has gone up, and all of these stories don't seem to be making much of a blip on the media right now.
No.
And that's sad to me. So, you can say, oh, it's just a strip club, but, they're like family, and it employs or, it helps a lot of people stay off the dole. So, and they earn a living, and they feed their families, and now they can't. And nobody else is stepping up, and there's no more stimulus coming. So, what are they doing? And it's been tough. It's been tough.
Yeah, we can't wait to forget 2020, and hopefully 2021 brings something better.
Oh, bring on the good.
Yeah.
Let's be done with all this bad. Let's bring on the good. Yeah.
That's right.
We can only hope. So we're going to wrap up this hour, and thank you for coming on the show, and hope we can have you back another time.
Oh, I'd be honored. Thank you so much, Eric and Kayla and Cole. I really appreciate you guys having me as a guest. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
So with that, when we come back, we'll talk about whatever. So you have a good night. B.A. Chris, thank you for coming on the show. And stay tuned for the last hour.
Thank you.
You are listening to S4 on Spreaker.com.
host, Eric Cooper.
All righty, welcome back to S4. We just got done with interviewing B.A. Crisp. Great guest. Definitely have her back. I think we'll have her back for a little more government discussion. Okay. So I wanted to carry on the conversation a little bit about human trafficking, since that was one of her big goals, along with the paranormal. Because like I said at the end of the hour, most people don't understand how local trafficking actually happens.
Anybody, anywhere, anytime. Yeah,
it happens here all the time. Happens in America all the time, is my point. Not here in concrete necessarily, but
Cedro,
we had a few cases of human trafficking there, yes.
Yeah, and the Army back in 2008, it was either 08 or 09, actually made all soldiers take human trafficking awareness training. Because of the nature of our job and that, yes, we do travel everywhere, it's important. FEMA also required, it was either FEMA or Red Cross, required their people to also take human trafficking awareness, because if you have a disaster, the traffic victims are going to have to come out. Mm-hmm. The home's destroyed, whatnot. And you need to know, what does trafficking look like? Mm-hmm. I took a webinar last week from a medical doctor that was, she started her own organization for basically teaching doctors and medical professionals what to look for in traffickers. And so I think you saw, I posed that same question in the Upriver group. Mm-hmm. How many, because there's a lot of medical personnel that live upriver, and how many of them had actually taken trafficking awareness training? And I think one out of about 10?
Yeah, something like that.
So what does a trafficking victim look like? I've heard many cases where you've got a random person sitting in the corner, not a dad, not a husband, not a boyfriend, just a random person that came in with the victim. That's common. So tattoos are common. I'm not going to go into the gross specifics, but a lot of times they'll have dollar signs tattooed around private areas. They'll have special names tattooed. They'll have, there's big red flags that you need to know what you're looking at. You need to be trained on what to look for. And when you're looking at MK Ultra, for trafficking to be happening back then, or the abduction of children back at MK Ultra, that was back in the 40s and 50s.
Right.
It tells you right there, trafficking has been going on for a lot longer than people realize. And like I think you brought that up earlier, that even trafficking's probably been going around since the beginning of time.
Oh, absolutely.
At least human civilization. Oh, yeah. Caveman grabbing.
That was
other
the way of the Batman.
Yeah.
Caveman grabbing the other caveman's kid, running off to his tribe. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. Anyway, Halloween. How many days away are we from Halloween? We are 20 days away
20
from
days.
Halloween.
20 days. I'm so excited. I love Halloween. Halloween is like one of my favorite holidays.
But it's raining.
I don't care about that rain. It's not like we trick or treating.
We're going to be in a nice garage, hanging out all evening, except for when we're required to do something.
When's that going to be?
Halloween
night.
I know that.
That's our job.
But when are we going to be required to do so?
Well, we've got we bob for apples, but
We're not doing that.
COVID
this year.
safe way.
Yeah.
No, we've always done it this way. We've never actually bobbed for apples.
So do we actually have to change the water after every kid?
Oh, no.
No water.
There's no water. We put them on a string and make them eat it off
That
the
way,
string.
right.
Just in case we have a kid that's kind of scared of water, we attach the apple to a string on top of
That's right.
And then every kid gets their own apple, and so it was kind of already social distance, so we just continue with that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's our job. We got to put the apples on the string.
One kid at a time.
No,
they're already
we
6
use a
feet
big
apart.
enough area that
Everybody's already 6 feet apart, and everybody's already in their own section.
Right.
It works pretty good. And then there'll be other games that they play, like they do the spider race, which we don't have to run that at all, thank God.
The hell is spider race?
What did they use as a spider?
Are you
you use the little plastic spiders.
Are you
Little
taking notes,
plastic
folks?
spiders.
These are some ideas for
Yeah,
you to do with
you
your
use
kids.
the little plastic spiders. You put people in their own lanes, obviously socially distanced. You give them a straw, and the first one to
they have
blow
to
the
blow the
spider
plastic
across
spider across the
the
finish
finish
line.
line.
Yeah, if you
wins
don't
a
like the
prize.
kid, you put them on the carpet.
Yeah. And then obviously different cup games. We do a lot of stacking cup games. Then we also have the horrible saran wrap ball.
Yes.
Oh my god. It takes forever to put one of these together, but it is so much fun and the kids love it. What?
I like how you say that as if you've ever put one together.
I have not put one together. That is your job, sir. Because I figure if, I'm helping cook and do the rest of the stuff.
Whatever.
You got to do something.
So if you ever have taken, you ever gone to Costco and they have, it's like 1 mile of saran wrap. You buy a bunch of small toys and candy and different things. And you start by wrapping one big thing in the center of the ball. And then you just keep wrapping saran wrap. And every once in a while you rip the saran wrap and you make a literal ball of saran wrap, putting in different things as you go along.
Little toys, little treats, different stuff like that.
You give the kids a set of dice, and they all sit in a fairly large circle, so they have lots of room. And the first one gets the ball. The one ahead of them has the set of dice. They have to roll a set of doubles. When they roll a set of doubles, the ball gets passed to them, and they pass the dice on to the next person.
Yeah.
And you try and get that ball unwrapped as fast as you can. But because of how well it's wrapped, you have to actually find the edge. You can't tear it, you can't do anything like that. And there are some spots that we make it so that the ball starts over completely again. Mm-hmm. It works very well.
Yep, definitely.
Are we doing chocolate-covered onions again?
No.
I think that might be a Christmas time thing where we do chocolate-covered California Reapers.
Yeah, that's
Instead of chocolate-covered strawberries.
Okay.
Yep, that'll be fun.
Oh, an announcement, folks.
For the adults.
So our Seahawks are now 5-0.
Winner.
Yes, they are.
At one point, but still.
It was a rough game.
It was
a rough game.
It was an interesting
but
game.
Wilson
Well,
pulled some magic out of his button.
They haven't had to play in the rain this entire season.
Not just the rain, it was cold today.
Yeah.
It was chilly. It was definitely
The
chilly.
temperature dropped, and like last night, I felt horrible. My whole body was on fire because of that temperature drop we had.
Yeah.
It was cold today. The snow, I think, is around the corner soon. I hate to say it, but
Well, we got our generators. Make sure you get your generators ready, and make sure you have enough gas to run them, just in case.
Yeah. But yes, the Seahawks are undefeated. We did win.
And that is a franchise first. We have never been 5-0 in a season.
Nice.
Really?
Never.
Yep.
Not in our whole
Existence.
Well, we
of
pulled it
Seahawks.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's make this the year that we don't lose a game. That would be cool.
That would be awesome.
That would be
You both better be
interesting.
knocking on some frickin' wood right now.
That would be awesome.
I'm not a Seahawks fan.
Hit you, woman! Do it! No! Thank you.
All right.
So, for our listeners, and if you're not local, then this doesn't apply to you, but on Wednesday, Colton and I will be starting Upriver Counter Chaos, which will be a new show we're starting for Homeland Security issues, disaster preparedness issues, human trafficking, Seaburn, anything upriver, Homeland Security related.
And
And
not just Homeland Security.
No, but evacuation routes, disaster
Public safety.
preparedness.
Public safety.
Public safety related.
But let's not say that's not just for people around upriver. KSVU.com.
Okay, there you go.
Is where you can listen to that.
The Wi-Fi network. You might want to check the connection settings.
Shut up.
Shut up, Google. You weren't invited.
Google, off.
But yeah, no, I forgot. Yes, it is KSVU 90.1 FM, but they are online right now.
Yes, well, they'll be online. That's probably going to continue.
They will continue
That's
online as well. Yeah.
Okay, the KSVU.com.
Yeah, so you can continue to listen to us on there. It will not be on Spreaker or anywhere else.
They will be.
It is specifically for that channel. So
Yeah.
All right. So, what have you guys been doing these last few weeks? What have you been up to? Like, anything cool?
Sitting 4 feet away from you on the couch.
I know what you've been doing, but I'm like, okay. No, basically, so I got, like, super bored. Okay.
Sorry.
KSVU.org.
It's KSVU.org. KSVU.org is our local terrestrial radio station.
Yeah.
Yes. And we are also on there. This show is on there.
Yeah, S4 is on there on Saturday nights from 10 to 12 p.m. Pacific time.
Well, and they do a series of reruns from our previous shows.
But right now it's listed as FMP and Friends on their schedule, so...
we will get that
Don't
fixed.
Fix that up. For sure.
Yes, Dennis, but it's only 6 feet if you are not related. They can be 4 feet if they're the same family. And
we're not going to talk about the mask wearing part.
I'm not going to wear a mask in my own house.
I
Or in your house.
Don't give me that.
Okay, Dennis, okay.
No.
She might fight you on that one. I don't know.
You can go ahead and wear a mask. Either that or start brushing your teeth. One or the other.
Damn. So, with... we actually decorated the house last night for Halloween, just to make it a little more cheery. Mm-hmm. Because it has been kind of bland the last few days.
I did too.
Did you?
Yeah, just not this house.
No, I buried a bunch of things underneath.
Huh?
I buried a bunch of things. We got the live action thing going on.
Oh my goodness.
A few satanic rituals, just the norm.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I kind of, I got to admit, I've kind of like gotten to that point where I went off the deep end a little bit on a couple of things. No, I do that occasionally. You know me. It's what I do. But I went on like a binge these last few days. Uh-huh. So for the last, I think it's probably been about a week and a half now.
Yes.
I have gone on like a massive documentary binge.
Oh, Lordy.
And I've watched all of the documentaries on friggin' all of the streaming services now. So every streaming service that I have, and I think we got like probably 6 of those things. Mm-hmm. I've watched out every documentary on all of them. So I've gotten to the point now where I was clicking through YouTube, watching different stuff, and I'm like, this is getting a little ridiculous here. So I decided last week that I'm going to teach myself an ancient language because I need something to do. I need something to keep me going. So I've been learning Sumerian, actually. So that should be interesting.
Does she speak English Sumerian in her sleep now?
I don't know. Well, no. She still speaks English.
No.
Or does she sleep?
I don't really sleep anymore.
That's not true.
I sleep during the day.
Last night you were talking a lot in your sleep, but
probably.
It just, if she learns a different language, it just gives me a reason to ignore her, and she can't say anything about it because I don't understand her.
Yeah. No, I get so bored. I go on these weird little kicks all the time. I pick up new things all the time and try to figure it out and learn it, and then I'm done with that and I move on to the next thing. That's how I roll. It's weird, but it's what happens.
So yes, we actually do have S4 is booked all the way to next year.
Yep, we are solidly booked. Actually, we have quite a few
To the second weekend of January.
Yep.
We got some
have
really
one for that
good
week.
shows coming up too, guys. So you definitely stay tuned for those. We got some interesting topics and some interesting guests for sure.
And I believe, I have to get clarification on this, but I believe Abronzell actually moved back to Washington.
Oh, did he?
Because remember, back in December when we had him on the show, he was in Tennessee,
Yes.
and now he's in Redmond,
Oh, wow. Okay.
from the looks of it.
Nice.
Again, I sent him a message earlier today for clarification, but it does look like he's here. So next week we have Roundtable. The 25th we have Superstitions of Halloween.
Oh, I'm so excited for that one.
Yeah, keep studying.
Oh, I got this, man.
So it's going to get interesting because November 1st we have Day of the Dead. I believe you were going into Native. Not that one?
Nope.
New
That one, 13 Ghosts.
13 Ghosts.
13 Ghosts.
Yep.
That's right. I still need to watch that movie just to get refreshed again.
Yeah. And we are
We just
also...
got it yesterday.
Yep. We're going to watch that probably
That's
tonight,
fantastic.
I would assume.
I might watch it when I get home.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. Day of the Dead, Halloween, and
All Saints Day.
13 Ghosts.
Yep.
We have Charles Beaver coming on November 8th. Of course, Roundtable is going to be Thanksgiving themed, but is the 15th. The 22nd, we have Native American lore. And then the 29th is American Witches with Abronzell.
All right.
Going into December, we have Roundtable on the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have our Kids S4 Christmas show on the 13th. And if y'all want a copy of the calendar, we can always give you the dates. The 20th, we are doing a Winter Solstice show. The 27th, we are doing our 2020 final complaints. And then the 3rd of January is going to be 2021 predictions. So that's what you're looking at, folks. Write those dates and topics on your calendars, and we're looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm especially looking forward to the 2021 show. Just saying.
Yeah, we'll have so much to talk about.
Oh, for sure. Recap on 2020 is going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Murder Hornets, my favorite topic.
Murder hornets, aliens. Come on. We got so much going on.
So,
It literally now comes up as a joke.
what's
Murder
that?
hornets come up as a joke.
No.
What?
The
2020.
fact that the government actually came out and said aliens are real. We have things. And no one gives a crap.
Nobody cares. Nobody listens.
Like-
Nobody cares. Nobody's talking
No,
about it.
the
Yeah.
ultimate time for disclosure. When it could have, it could have actually been a disclosure event. And, okay.
No,
cool.
it was a disclosure
Well, yeah,
event. That's the part that nobody seems to understand. Is when the Pentagon comes out, they say, hey, guess what? We got video, we got an actual craft, we got this, we got that, we got aliens. Basically is what they're coming out and saying. And the entire world goes, yeah, okay.
Can you imagine?
But to the point where even paranormal investigators and ufologists did not act the way they were supposed to.
No, they were like,
There was no,
oh, okay.
yeah, we knew this. There was,
Right?
okay.
yeah, everybody was like, okay.
That's not the biggest thing right now. Don't worry, guys. We'll handle that later.
So wait, can you imagine the planner behind that idea? Going,
Joe!
you know what?
Hi, Joe.
Dude, here's what we're going to do. Everyone's quarantined. Everyone's at home with COVID. And now we're going to jump up and say, hey, the Pentagon's got aliens. Can you imagine the planner? And here's what's going to happen.
Everybody's
They're all going to go, okay. And then when they all whine and bitch and moan about no disclosure, we'll say, we did. Oh. That's why.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna make a prediction on air.
Don't
What's
do
that?
it. No, okay. Let's hear this.
I got
January 1st, 12:01 a.m.
Okay.
A.m.
AM.
I got
$12:01 a.m.
I got $5 on it.
Friend,
What?
everyone across the world's going to wake up and be like, holy shit, aliens are real. And panic will ensue.
It finally just sunk in.
It just sinks into everyone at the moment 2020 ends.
And we'll all sit here on S4 and laugh. And laugh and laugh and laugh and say, really? You just now figured that out?
I told you so.
Except for Kayla. She'll be excited because that means another Ancient Aliens is probably coming out.
Right?
Oh, no. It won't be ancient aliens. It'll be alien culture. 101.
Yeah,
Ancient Aliens will have a whole new season if that happens.
Alien cultures and religions. There we go.
You know, I don't know, man. Aliens. Like, I believe in aliens. I believe there has to be some form of aliens. There has to be something out there, something like that. But where everybody else says that aliens have to be more advanced. In order to get here, they have to be more advanced. They have to be more advanced.
Gilgamesh.
I gotta say that, honestly, I believe...
Isn't that the guy from the Smurfs?
That they don't have to be.
Huh?
You guys can keep your aliens with more technology than us, because I don't think all of them do. Not a chance.
Well, no. Of course not.
Not a chance.
But
I don't think all of the ones visiting do. I don't think all the ones that can put a ship in the air, bring it here, are more advanced than we are. What?
why?
Why? Well, it depends on what minerals are on their planet. It depends on what kind of a planet they live on, what kind of a gravity system they have, what kind of a everything to their advancement.
What if they can come this far? They're probably mining other planets.
Oh,
That's probably what that is a survey mission for them.
Oh, disclosed in Hillary's emails that she was looking at Gilgamesh's burial site.
Isn't that the guy that fought the Smurfs?
Huh?
Gilgamesh? Was it what?
No, I can't remember who Gilgamesh was. It's in the Bible.
Oh, man.
Who fought the Smurfs?
Huh?
I don't know.
All right, people.
Who was Gilgamesh? Shut up.
And who fought the Smurfs?
Oh, man.
Gargamel!
Gargamel. There you go. Thank you, Izzy.
Gargamel.
Oh, and poor Joe. Joe, do you have any rain yet? Because they have what? How many millions of acres in California are burnt? I think it's broken a world record.
Oh.
Probably. Friend.
Call Joe in.
Call Joe in?
Call Joe in.
Okay, fine.
Did he say?
Yep, we're going to do a check-in on Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, but did he say I'm ready? Or?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
Too bad. Sorry, Joe. You're in now.
We're calling you in, Joe.
Okay, it's okay. You guys, so...
Do you have it?
I have it right here.
Good. I figured you did.
Hey, well, time out. Did you guys just say you had no idea who Gilgamesh was?
Huh?
You didn't know who Gilgamesh was?
I can't remember all that.
Oh, Mesopotamian hero.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever. Kayla, who's KJ Wright?
The epic poem of Gilgamesh? I mean, come on, guys.
Who's KJ Wright?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Hey, so
Joe.
what's our critter report tonight?
Creature report.
Oh, right
Oh,
on.
wait, hold on.
Right on.
There we go. Say that again. What is it again?
What?
You have it on mute.
What happened?
You were on mute. What? You gotta say that again.
I was just saying a deer just walked by and set the security light off just as you called.
Right on.
Oh, hey.
I know you can't hear him. That's why I took him off mute.
Oh,
Izzy, calm down.
So how many acres have burned in California so far? Over 1 million, right? Or is it 4 million?
No, over 4 million.
4 million.
Over 4 million. That's what it was.
No, but there's one fire. It's called the North Complex, or the
North Complex.
God, which one is it? It's one of the complexes, but
Yeah.
the one fire itself is over 1 million acres, and that's the first time that's happened.
wow.
Yeah.
That's an insane amount of
And
acreage.
it's over 4 million total.
Jeez.
Why?
Had a small one just over the hill from me yesterday. I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook page, but you can see the fire bombers flying over my head here.
Yeah. So, why? So, is it poor forest management? Is it? I mean, what's your thoughts on all that?
That's exactly what it is. I think number one, it's poor forest management. 30, 40 years ago, they used to. I mean, they would cut certain areas. They would run lines through it. They would clean up all the dead wood out of the forests, and they would use it in industry and stuff. Mm-hmm. But about 30, 40 years ago, the Sierra Club got in there and they said, you guys, you have to leave the forest the way it is. You got to leave it natural.
No, it doesn't work that way.
And that was a huge mistake. Everyone told them, but so here we are, 30, 40 years later, paying for it, and it's just kindling everywhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's when you open it up.
It's not global warming or climate change, because if that was the fact, there would be fires everywhere around the globe.
Right.
Not just here.
I can get on board with that.
No, and it's not just the forest management either. This year was a hard year on California, man. When that lightning storm came through, that was an epic lightning storm that nobody expected.
Well, that was just the match that lit the flame. I mean, that lightning storm was amazing.
Absolutely.
Well, people are looking for firewood all the time. So if DNR would open up the forest after they got done logging and say, hey, come out here, cut up your firewood, take it home. They do that in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you get arrested for doing that here.
I know that. It's poor management.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. If they were actually open that up, it's a huge money-making opportunity for the state as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot.
You charge so much for a license to every person that wants to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even just $20 for your DNR wood permit. There you go. People would be swarming to get it.
Yeah, but they wouldn't do $20. They'd probably want to charge $500. And this is the most horribly run, corrupt state as far as politics go. I mean, I love California.
Right.
But, oh, my God, it's run by boneheads.
I think most states are. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I have barely stepped foot into your state.
I go through it one time.
The best part for me was I found a mountain that was named after a pop.
Shasta?
Yep. And that's the way I viewed it, because
isn't it?
It is. I had never heard of Mount Shasta, and it was beautiful. But all I could think of was, why would anyone name a mountain after a soda company?
And you probably stopped in weed, too, didn't you?
Yes, actually is the only reason we went to California, was because I was looking at the map, and we were just going to Oregon for a vacation, just looking around. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at the map, saw the border, saw the word weed on Google Maps, and I'm like, oh, we gotta go.
Oh.
Yeah, we went to California. We went to California for, what was it? Shasta and weed.
Plus, you guys have places that sell alcohol out of barns. I love that. Right along the highway.
Alcohol in barns.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of barns that have a bunch of alcohol.
Kind of like in the South, where there's a fireworks stand open year-round. All along the highway.
Right?
That's kind of cool, too.
That's what we need.
Blow up stuff.
Well.
I don't think that's what we need. We can't even keep people from blowing.
And
well, I don't know if they still do it, but I was in Arizona about 30 years ago, and I saw a place, and I couldn't believe it. I took a picture of it because no one would have believed me. It was like a little drive-through place, like you'd have a dairy store or something, but it was alcohol and firearms in a drive-through.
Really? Awesome.
You drive up the window, you order your 357 and a 12-pack, and you're out.
Wow.
No, I want a 50 cal Barrett sniper rifle, and do you have coffee? Coffee and guns. There we go.
Drive-through daiquiri huts? Where is that? I want to drive-through daiquiri hut.
Oh. So, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Joe. We were talking human trafficking tonight.
Human trafficking?
Yep.
Yeah, buddy.
So how bad do you think human trafficking is in California?
I think it's bad everywhere. I think it's one of those things that people don't want to think about, and they're afraid to do anything about it. But, I mean, it exists. They had a place right here in this little town we got as a Chinese massage parlor, and they busted it, and they found a bunch of girls chained up in the back of the place.
Yeah.
And it's like you wouldn't expect it. And if it's in a little place like this, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the people in charge partake of the services. That's why they're not really going after this stuff.
No.
They're a bunch of sick puppies.
It's been proven, politicians, law enforcement, doctors, lawyers, are all part of the human trafficking problem.
Oh, yeah.
They may not be the traffickers, but they know about it, which makes them a part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're getting paid off to look the other way.
Well, in more ways than one. They get paid off. So, it's not new, but I think it's coming more to the forefront with conversation, with shows like what we do, with organizations like BA Crisps.
Well, in your public transportation. So if you ride the bus up here, if you've ever ridden a bus up here, they have.
I rode a bus in Washington.
They have all of those little signs inside the bus, like little advertisements and different things. And now they have an electronic thing that comes down and tells you about bus safety and all that jazz.
Right.
They have on a page on that, and in a couple of places on the advertisements, the number for human trafficking, what you do if you expect human trafficking, and where to go if you're a victim of human trafficking.
It's sad it's come to that. It should have come to that years ago.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff that should have come to that years ago.
Yeah, but you're talking kids that are being abducted, and I would have liked to
into the amount of children that disappear every year.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at NAMUS, NAMUS.com, I think it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was working on that map for a short period of time. I was trying to do the overlays between the missing 411, between missing people, and by the time that I got just the missing people over the course of the last year on the map, before I even pulled up any of the Pallades stuff, any of the 411 stuff, I just put the missing people on the map. You couldn't see land.
No.
And I'm like, well, this is never going to work because there's so many pins on this thing that there's no way you could interact with it. It won't work. So I stopped working on that, but it was ridiculous, the amount of missing people.
And what's even more disgusting is the fact that we have officials that know what's going on.
Yep.
And do nothing to stop it.
Absolutely.
Well, there was a thing. I saw it on the internet where they were down in Georgia, and I think it was the ATF went into this place, and they found like 47 missing children in this place that were being held against their will there. It never once, I watched, it didn't hit ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN. It wasn't on any of them. It never made national news, and that was huge.
Right.
And it was like, why aren't they reporting this? I saw it on a couple places. I went to the place in Georgia, the ATF agency or whatever. They had it on their website. That's their official website. So it's not just some bogus meme that you saw somewhere.
No,
this was a real event.
And that's honestly where I get most of my news. I don't watch ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox. I don't watch either of those. I get my news straight from government websites. That's where you get the real news. Yeah. Whether it's FBI.gov, CIA.gov, even WhiteHouse.gov. If you want to know what's really going on in the White House, look on the White House website. You can actually find the executive orders that were signed and whatnot. You don't have to go by Twitter or Facebook or...
I don't tweet.
Okay, so this is terrible, but I think of it as a game of telephone now. Okay? So somebody, a politician somewhere, anybody says something. The next guy takes what they say, and they say what they said. To this guy who takes what they say and say what they said. But as it goes down the line, as it goes to the news, it changes, it twists, it changes, it twists, it changes, until it's whatever story they wanted to bring up.
Yeah. Yeah, news isn't news anymore. It's opinion is fact.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why do you think they killed Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah, no joke,
and they got a hold of his girlfriend, and she knows everything. She knows all the people that were in it, and all the people that were involved in that, and you don't hear a word about it anywhere.
No, you can't find an actual list.
Because it's all the top people were involved.
Right.
Yep, they were like, hey, let's scoot that one under the cover. Nobody needs to know nothing.
Yeah.
Next.
Nothing to see here. Move along.
Exactly.
So, what's your knowledge of MK Ultra, Joe?
Just what I've heard on shows like yours. I have no personal experiences with them at all.
Gotcha. So a lot of the MK Ultra stuff, and they have enough volunteer. I can guarantee you put up, I'm doing an experiment on blah, you're going to have volunteers that come out. You don't need to get involuntary subjects, which is a big part of the problem.
Well, you just hit it right on the head, because how many experiments have come out over the past many decades where they just said, we got this experimental drug. I tell you what, let's just spray it on this town and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or let's give out flu shots in this one area, but they're not flu shots. They're something else, and let's just see what happens. They do it all the time, and it's legal for the government to do that to its own citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't
be.
Look at the Japanese internment camps. How many of those? How many of the Japanese got experimented on? And how many Native Americans in the reservations got experimented on?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, but 41,000 of them are still missing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, okay. So
that is just in Canada, by the way. That's not the U.S. That doesn't include the U.S. I don't know how many Native Americans are missing in the U.S. currently, but right now there are 41,000 Canadian women missing. Yeah. And the government just said, whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Except for when Trump needed to get elected.
The interesting thing about missing is look at the missing people in Alaska. I think for the past 30 years, it averages out to 3 people a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Just poof, disappeared.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was saying. When I was doing that missing persons, I'm like, there's no space to put a pin left for missing persons on this map.
I gotta say, at least once a month, though, one of those people in Alaska, one of them's gotta be.
Where's the bear food?
Yeah. He just looked and said, that bear don't look that tough.
Yeah.
No. So you even take 10% and you figure, and I'm just talking, I have no facts in front of me, folks. I'm just throwing out a number. 10% of the millions that are missing, you could probably say are crime related, are custody cases, abductions. People
that want to disappear.
People that want to disappear, again, maybe because of domestic violence, maybe because, they're just tired of their family and they want to go away.
Right, okay. There's a ton of people that have their own reasons for wanting to just disappear off the map.
And then you take you take some of them that, yes, they're wildlife food. They went up in the mountains on a day hike.
They got lost.
They weren't prepared. They got lost. Yeah. They disappeared. You're going to have those. But you take the rest of them.
And where did they go?
Human trafficking.
Actually happened.
Yeah. Human trafficking, paranormal, missing 401.
Mm-hmm.
There's still an astronomical number that are missing from trafficking, that are missing from paranormal issues.
Yeah.
Whether it's a portal or alien abduction that didn't come back, or
whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
We don't know. Mm-hmm. We'll never know. We'll never have the full answer.
Yeah, but there are way too many of them for something else not to be happening as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too many for it to be all strictly crime-related or all accidental.
Mm-hmm.
It's
now, don't get me wrong. We have, just in our own community here, we have, the guy in Marble Mount that was abducting women.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there are definitely some sick people out there that do some horrible stuff. And I will say that definitely happens. But if you look at statistically, the amount of people that one person can abduct over a period of time and everything else without being caught, without being whatever, and the amount of people that are actually missing, it doesn't add up. There's got to be something else happening here. And like you said, human trafficking is a big one. Any of the paranormal stuff that's happening that people don't even put down on that map.
Yeah.
There's got to be more than just your average sick citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, up there in Washington, don't you guys have the feet that keep floating up?
Yes, the feet on the beaches.
I'm guessing that has something to do with trafficking somewhere.
Right.
Oregon, that's Oregon trafficking. No,
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's a possibility. It is.
But
Okay, so you were saying about MK Ultra that there are enough people that are willing to do these, and that's why we shouldn't be doing it on populations without them being willing to participate in it.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to straight up go devil's advocate here. I'm going to say the one thing that's different between a willing participant and an unknown participant is the fact that they don't know something is happening. Okay, so that in itself can cause the outcome to be very different. So if you were to take somebody and you were to tell them, we are going to inject you with this, right? And this and this and this could be the side effects. Well, then in your head, you know that you were injected with this, and these could be the side effects. So more people are going to have those side effects. More people are going to have those type of things happen to them because they were conditioned to think that this could happen to them. That's the only thing that I'm saying about an unknown population trial would be the fact that you don't actually have that thought in your head because you don't know what's happening.
Well, yeah, if you're going to be testing something and you want to know what it's going to do to a population that doesn't know they're getting it, you have to test it on a population that doesn't know they're going to get it.
Absolutely. Because if you even mention the fact that there's a possibility of this, at least 10 people in your group are going to say that they got that based on the fact that they were told it was a possibility. No, it's not ethical and it's not right. But I could understand, I guess, kind of, where they're coming from on the outside looking at it going, well, if we need to know what actually happens with this, this is what we have to do.
When they poison a population against their knowledge and call it in the name of national security, I call it BS.
Oh yeah, that's terrible for that population, and that is totally unethical in every way, shape, and form. But I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is from the scientific standpoint of wanting to know what it actually does and what the side effects actually are, you would have to almost do it blind.
2 words.
Well, that's why when they do a drug test, they don't tell the people, oh, you're getting a placebo.
Exactly. Exactly. But because of the human mind and the way our human mind works, even if you have the possibility of thinking that this is happening, you are going to say, I got this side effect, I got this side effect. And you see that in the placebo people. In the placebo population of people that they give nothing to will come up and say that they felt 100 times better than they did before. They'll say, oh my God, it made me stronger. It did this to me. Why? Because the power of suggestion and the power of your own mind is going to make it happen. So in order to actually have a fluid, like 100% nobody knows test, you would have to do it on a population that had no idea that it was happening.
But here,
you guys keep talking about MK Ultra. Maybe one of you guys are going to disappear one of these days.
Nah,
I vote Kayla.
We're ready for
God. I've been waiting to disappear for a while.
So here's another reason. A lot of human trafficking is considered a white collar crime. A lot of gangs for example, have gone to human trafficking because they've realized that you can only sell guns and drugs one time, whereas you make money over and over and over again with one victim.
Right.
And again, that depends on what kind of trafficking you
Sex
are doing.
trafficking is
If you're doing sex trafficking, for sure. Organ trafficking, well, they only have one of each.
Yeah.
Or two, depending on what the organ is. But
which I was surprised to hear when BA was talking about the hospital in New York. Because most of your organ trafficking you do hear about is going on in Mexico. Not all, but a lot of it. So we know it's happening here too.
Yeah, but at the same time, miraculously, all these people that make millions of dollars end up finding somebody that will donate this organ, or finding somebody randomly that happened to have the same blood type that happened to die on this bridge at this particular time while they were in the hospital. I mean, you see that kind of crap all the time too, where they end up overcoming things that shouldn't be able to be overcome by freak accident or oops. So, you know something's got to be going on.
Absolutely. So what's going on in the world of Joe?
Not much. Just I'm enjoying the fact that today we actually had blue skies.
What?
Oh, hey, give us our blue skies back. You're the one who took it. It's
it was just one day. I don't know. We'll see if it keeps going like this.
It shouldn't. We should actually switch.
Oh no, he's talking smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we should switch.
It's all smoke, man. The wind came
He
out of the
needs
east
this.
instead of the
Well,
west.
they need
so
rain,
it blew everything the other way.
It's okay, rain's coming.
Hopefully for you guys, the rain's coming.
It's downpouring here. We actually have...
Oh, I could use that. I'll take the rain.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, you were talking about trafficking and the cartels and stuff. You know, an interesting thing about that is down in Mexico, the cartels started buying up some of the avocado ranches to use it as like a front for their businesses and transport. They used to try to hide their drugs into the avocado. And they figured out they were making more money running the avocado ranches than they were trying to get drugs across the border, and it was legal. Now there's not an avocado ranch anywhere in Mexico that's not owned by a cartel, and they're making billions off of it.
I know one.
You can't exactly guarantee that.
Well, I doubt he would sell off to the cartel. But you never know. Maybe he's part of the cartel now.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sorry.
Oh. Yes, I do know an actual avocado ranch in Mexico. But yeah. Oh. All right, so I think we're going to start wrapping up early a little bit.
Yeah.
It's
and
cold.
what are we doing next week?
Next week is roundtable.
Next week is roundtable.
We have
Dumbass.
Joe. You coming on
It's
roundtable
the
next week?
third week of October.
I'm sorry.
Sure, I'll be there.
Hey.
Outstanding. So I know we have
Nice.
Joe. We probably have Barry, and we have
Arnold.
Arnold coming on,
Yep.
and
Rosella.
Rosella. Yeah. Rosella will be on there for a little bit.
And it'll be a Halloween theme. So come with 3 Halloween themed questions.
Halloween questions.
Yeah, buddy.
For October.
October equals.
Or if something pressing is going on, obviously bring a question about that.
Yeah.
So with that, folks, have a safe week. Stay tuned for our new show coming out Wednesday. Probably won't hit the airwaves until the following week. So figured 2 weeks, but we
Maybe
will
3.
start.
Maybe 3.
2 or 3 weeks, yeah.
That's on Irma.
Yep.
And so.
And that will be Upriver County
And
Chaos.
she is a busy lady, so it might take her a little while.
Oh, once she gets it, she usually goes straight to KSVR.
I know, but
So stay tuned for that, and we will have a date, a day and time that will be aired on KSVU. So with that, y'all have a safe week. Stay warm, because I know it's getting cool for some of us. And remember, keep your eyes to the skies.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight on S4, the official voice of Forest Moon Paranormal. You can contact S4 through our website at www.s-4radio.com or on Facebook. Make sure you give us a like on our page and join the Forest Moon Paranormal group. If you are interested in advertising, take a look at our packages and contact Cole or Eric at 1-360-999-2830. Again, thank you. And remember, keep your eyes to the sky.